Now, in other news, the US President Donald Trump is in Beijing today, meeting China's President Xi Jinping. It is the first such visit by a US leader in nearly 10 years. Talks so far have focused on trade and on Taiwan, with Xi warning that disagreement over the island's future could even lead to conflict. However, the pair did exchange a cordial welcome earlier, emphasizing the links between their two countries.
The American and Chinese people share much in common. We value hard work. We value courage and achievement. We love our families and we love our countries. Together we have the chance to draw on these values to create a future of greater prosperity, cooperation, and happiness and peace for our children. We love our children. This region and the world is a special world with the two of us united and together.
The people of China and the United States are both great peoples. Achieving the great rejuvenation of the Chinese nation and making America great again can go hand in hand. We can help each other succeed and advance the well-being of the whole world.
With me now is Kethevane Gorjestani, our foreign editor, to talk a bit about Trump's trip to Beijing. And Kethevane, look, despite the warm words there, despite the pomp of the ceremonies, one issue is looming large, as I mentioned earlier, Taiwan.
Yes, absolutely. And that stark warning from Xi Jinping to Donald Trump, according to the Chinese state media, which quoted the Chinese president as saying this to the U.S. president during their closed-door meeting. The Taiwan question is the most important issue in a China-U.S. relation. If mishandled, the two nations could collide or even come into conflict, pushing the entire China-U.S. relationship into a highly perilous situation, something that the Chinese in general have said often, but this being attributed to the Chinese president as having said that during the meeting shows that the public comments are not always the same as the private comments. Taiwan responded, downplayed a little bit these comments by the Chinese, saying that it was nothing surprising or new coming from the Chinese, but they did add that if maintaining peace and stability in the Taiwan Strait is truly the greatest common ground between China and the U.S., then China should restrain its own behavior of military intimidation. Now, Taiwan, yes, trying to downplay a little bit, trying to play it cool, but they are a little bit on edge following Donald Trump's comments earlier this week when he said in front of the cameras that he would be discussing arms sales to Taiwan with Xi Jinping, which is a complete departure from decades of U.S. policy. The U.S. has this longstanding commitment with Taiwan that it will help Taiwan defend itself, and part of that commitment is those arms sales. And right now you have a $14 billion package that is awaiting Donald Trump's approval to be able to transfer those weapons to Taiwan. So far, the only real comment that we've had from the United States has come from Secretary of State Marco Rubio, because there was no mention of Taiwan in the U.S. official readout. But Marco Rubio, who was being interviewed by U.S. media, said that there is no change in U.S. policy towards Taiwan, and it would be a terrible mistake for China to take Taiwan by force.
Okay, so no mention of Taiwan in the American readout, but Washington then clearly focused on another big global issue, that of Iran and the Strait of Hormuz.
Absolutely. This was pretty much half of the readout was about Iran and the Strait of Hormuz. And according to the White House, the U.S. and Chinese presidents agreed that Hormuz must remain open, that it must not be militarized, and that there should be no tolls. And they added that Xi Jinping apparently also expressed interest in purchasing more U.S. oil to reduce China's dependence on the Strait of Hormuz in the future. That is because, of course, China, yes, is a very strong power and therefore less hurt right now by what is happening in the Strait of Hormuz. But they do buy 80% of Iran's oil exports. And so prolonged closure of the Strait of Hormuz will eventually start really hurting the Chinese. There are right now reports from Iranian state media that say that Tehran agreed to facilitate the passage of several Chinese vessels vessels on Wednesday evening following a request from China to Iran. Unclear whether after passing the Strait of Hormuz, those Chinese vessels were allowed to pass the U.S. naval blockade, so that will be something to look out for. But U.S. officials have been very clear in the lead up to this visit that Donald Trump would be asking Xi Jinping for his help in the Strait of Hormuz to put pressure on the Iranians, even though Donald Trump, just before heading out to China, said, I don't need China's help to reopen the Strait of Hormuz. But going back to our previous topic, Taiwan, there is a worry among Taiwan supporters that maybe Xi Jinping is going to use his leverage and his possibility of putting pressure on Iran to give Donald Trump what he wants on Iran and the Strait of Hormuz, but saying, if you want our help in the Strait of Hormuz, you need to give us a little bit of concessions when it comes to Taiwan.
All right, good to get your analysis. Thank you so much. Kethevane Gorjestani there.